George W. Bush, dirty moderates, fought a war that cost way too many lives at home and abroad, that being the Iraq War, but he also fought a war that continues to save lives. That is this episode of Dirty Moderate. What am I talking about? And why are we talking about it? Well, it must be first said that George W. Bush has come to be somewhat rehabilitated in the last, 4 to 6 years, 7, 8 years, whatever, since Trump came down the escalator, or since Trump has actively tried to destroy democracy, because he's been seen in his retirement, perhaps as somebody that was the scourge of liberals at the time, but certainly didn't destroy democracy or attempt to, and also feels like a decent guy who ran as a compassionate conservative and did some things, actually more than one thing, that were good despite the misadventure in Iraq, the signing and the vetoing, rather, of stem cell research funding, obviously being very anti-abortion, running on a ban on gay marriage. Again, this goes back to 2004. So a lot of things we have to look at now from the rearview mirror and go, okay, that was then. We may not have liked it, but he certainly cared about America, loved America, probably wasn't really the guy for it, but he had the name Bush. He had the charm. He'd been a governor of Texas. You know the history. Okay. Well, not long after he became president in 2001, toward the end of 2001, there were about 40 million people living with HIV/AIDS across the world. Many of those countries, most of those countries, lacked access to treatments. That was a death sentence. The majority of them lived in Africa, on the continent of Africa. And in the year of 2001, almost 2.5 million people died of AIDS that year. Okay. And there were estimates that if nothing was going to be done about the spread of AIDS on the African continent and the Caribbean and elsewhere, certainly in poorer countries, that we could be looking by the year 2021, because remember, this was 2001, that we could be looking at almost 100 million worldwide deaths. I know, staggering, gasp, horrific. Well, Bush did something about it. And I think it's probably his greatest legacy. Say what you want, but that compassionate conservative streak, rooted in his evangelical Christianity, actually was put to noble use, I would even argue. He worked bipartisan, with a bipartisan Congress. Cross-party cooperation still happened then, believe it or not, and he saved millions of lives. He had the broad support of evangelical groups and churches then, and big time from the Catholic Church. And here we are, almost 20 or more than 20 years later, rather, and we now have the same party that George W. Bush led, who was by all accounts in those days considered, though a compassionate conservative, a very conservative in the ideological sense president. And now the same party that he once led, where he would certainly no longer be welcome, and that name Bush doesn't mean a hell of a lot anymore. Certainly Poppy Bush, but Jeb and George W., especially in Trump's universe. This current Republican Party is trying to take something that's been pretty settled, like everything else they do, and divide us again and fight it. Matter of fact, fighting that this initiative that Bush launched still has the support of the Catholic Church, but there's a lot of evangelical leaders who, of course, followed a thrice married guy who fucked a porn star, who never went to church, down the MAGA rabbit hole so they could get anti-abortion judges, and they still remain splintered. The Christians who are supposedly there to help people and follow Jesus's creed, Jesus's admonitions. Nope. They're kind of getting a little over this program too. The program, by the way, is called PEPFAR, PEPFAR, President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. It was developed, by the way, with medical experts, including Anthony Fauci. And it got a lot of the drugs and doctors and resources to 15 different countries across the globe. 12 of those were in Africa, as I said. He announced it, Bush did, in 2003 in his State of the Union that year. So here we are, 20 years later. Okay? So it is unbelievable to report that it saved, and this is public data, basically 25 million lives, largely by preventing AIDS from mothers to newborn kids. So about 5.5, 6 million babies have been able to be born free of HIV. Pretty big deal. And again, this is not the George W. Bush rehabilitation tour I'm on, but I think we have to honor a very important legacy. And I remember thinking this at the time, that Bush's commitment to this was really heroic. I mean, this, although Bush's pushing of this issue had the backing of almost everybody. I mean, this was not a contentious issue. This was a $15 billion investment that we made. That's right. You know, expansive, generous government, you might call it. As I said, backed by evangelicals. I thought it was part of their religious mission to do this. All right. It was supported by conservatives. Back in the day, there was a guy named Dave Weldon. He was a conservative from Florida. He sponsored the PEPFAR bill, and he praised it for allowing religious groups to get these federal funds to fight HIV. Henry Hyde was another famous conservative from Illinois. He was Republican. He authored what's called the Hyde Amendment. He was so fiercely anti-abortion that he never wanted any federal money or Medicaid money, especially, to ever go to fund any abortion. And Henry Hyde has the Hyde Amendment still there, okay? And the Weldon Amendment, Dave Weldon, both these guys really made sure this PEPFAR bill happened. He sponsored a law that allows insurers to refuse to pay for abortions. And during the debates, they won assurances the program would never pay for abortions. That was part of the deal, and that's okay. I'm devoutly pro-choice. This was not an abortion bill no. It was a bill to save lives, and there is no evidence since the enactment of PEPFAR that the law against this money, PEPFAR money, being used for abortions, has ever been violated. But that doesn't matter in today's MAGA-verse, right? They believe that Biden is conspiring to somehow use the PEPFAR program, wait for it, to start promoting abortions overseas, like anyone's out there promoting. Let's go out there and let's just promote it. I mean, this stuff, you think about the conspiracy theories that QAnon has brought forth. You think about all the craziness. Hillary Clinton's eating babies with Oprah and Tom Hanks. This is conspiracy stuff. JFK Jr. is alive. They're living they have a child sex ring under a pizza parlor in New Jersey. That's out there bonkers crazy. This seems just like ideological opposition, but it isn't. The Biden administration is going to use PEPFAR in violation of federal law to promote abortion? It's all a false premise. And it's also false that abortion has something to do with fighting AIDS. I mean, that's not what this is. And unfortunately, a lot of people who oppose this are in power in the House, and they are holding up reauthorization of this program right now, which is set to expire with a lot of other programs on September 30th. Looks like we're going to have another government showdown again. If you remember the one from the spring, we kicked the can down the road as we do in Washington. Here we are again as we come into early September, just 3 weeks from now. We're going to be back at the brink. This is part of the debate. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be opposing. But boy, in a polarized climate, there ain't any way that this isn't going to come out as a partisan issue, alas. The religious right imposed the abortion restrictions. Dave Weldon, Henry Hyde, as I said. Okay? And the original program also required that a third of all of this prevention money that went out and has saved all these lives taught fidelity and chastity. Okay? Even though the transmission of HIV and AIDS in all of these countries was mainly through drug injection, okay? And the abstinence efforts, they don't really work, but it doesn't matter. They were put in, they were removed in 2008 because that's not relevant, okay? The money is not supporting abortions, but it's also not about banning people's sex lives and getting involved in that. It's just saving lives, letting people be, people who've had no shot, not just at opportunity, but at life. People living, as I said, in poorer countries in Africa and elsewhere. This program has been supported by Republicans and Democrats and reauthorized 3 times, but not this year. Remember, the House only has a 5-seat majority. They're beholden to MAGA. Kevin McCarthy has no control of the lunatics. They are running the asylum. And they want to do anything they can, by the way, not to save lives, they don't care, but to burn everything down, especially to own the libs, and especially to make Biden look bad. They've been floating the impeachment idea. Okay. Well, this now is become a hot button issue in the war against woke, the war of culture, the war that these people keep bringing forth because they have no governing agenda. Okay. There is a conservative think tank that for many years was a respectable think tank. It's called the Heritage Foundation, very famous, been around a long time. In May, it released a bunch of blatant lies, which has been chum for the sharks, okay? Bloody chum in the water of the MAGA sharks, especially those in power. It said Biden and his administration were using PEPFAR to, quote, promote its domestic radical social agenda overseas, specifically abortion. And of course, let's bring it on in. Come on, cue the next song. Cue the other big hit, LGBTQ issues. That's what this is about. George W. Bush, conservative Catholics and evangelicals in 2003 created money not to save lives, but to promote abortion overseas. And of course, promote, I don't know, transgenderism, homosexuality. That's exactly what they did. Right. Okay. Well, this is a false report. And all the Biden administration has ever said was that they want to support women's and girls' sexual and reproductive health and rights in the United States as well as globally. Why shouldn't they? They can't control what goes on globally, but they never said, well, as a result of that, here's money to go get an abortion in sub-Saharan Africa. I know. It gobsmacks. It boggles. The only thing that Biden did, and he did the right damn thing, is he reversed a Trump-era policy that prevented federal money from going to any organization fighting AIDS that is also counseling people on abortion. Okay? But that is actually okay. George W. Bush was okay with that. Biden's position is consistent with the Bush position, that the abortion battle had nothing to do with saving people's lives, nothing to do with the health of people across the globe who were needlessly and likely to be wiped out from AIDS. But here we go. We're in it, right? This Heritage Foundation garbage, which really now has just become another arm of MAGA crap, own the libs, can't be woke. Even if it saves 25 million lives, can't be woke. I don't even know what woke is, but okay. Republicans in Congress, beside the lunatics now, they've jumped on the bandwagon because everybody's angling for their spotlight. Kevin McCarthy speaker, and he has no control. So anyway, a guy called Chris Smith in New Jersey, he sponsored the bills, the PEPFAR initiative, the initiative, the money and the reauthorization in 2018. As I said, it's been reauthorized several times. He himself wrote a letter to his House colleague saying that the Biden administration is now using PEPFAR for abortion promotion. Even though 5 years ago he was for it. He was always for it. That's not anywhere in the report. And the White House even added a comment and then put a footnote, okay, in being sent to members of Congress in a document that said, quote, PEPFAR does not fund abortions consistent with longstanding legal restrictions on the use of foreign assistance funding related to abortion. Chris Smith in New Jersey and all the pro-lifers, anti-abortion activists said they're upset that some of the nonprofit groups getting this PEPFAR money have separate efforts, which are not funded by the program, by the way, that promote or provide abortion. That's always been the case, okay? There have been groups that receive money that it's used and it's tracked, okay, to make sure it doesn't run afoul of federal law, that doesn't go toward abortion. Some of those organizations have abortion counseling for people elsewhere. That's not anything we can control. We can control it to the point of control, and that's it. Okay? Of course, the Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, Family Research Council, all these anti-choice groups are now making a test vote of this for their members. Remember, members are scored on how they vote, All these people who don't believe in climate change get a 0 from environmental groups, where they have 100 from these right-wing anti-abortion nutjob groups, right? And if anybody votes in favor of reauthorizing PEPFAR, it's a vote for abortion rights. That means that any of these people won't get their perfect score, because getting the perfect score is what they run on, even though many of them don't even believe it. But those that believe it want to run on it. They want to go back to rural America where people are dying of opioids and don't have health care, right? And they've already voted to cut food stamps on them and say, hey, by the way, just so you know, whatever else you're going through, I have a perfect score from the Family Research Council. Woohoo! I have a perfect score denying women's reproductive freedom, and I have a perfect score for the government regulating women's uteri. That's what they do. But anyway, this is enough. This isn't just chill in the air. This is a threat from right-wing activists that said, you better defeat this. And that means that this program, 20 years on, 25 million lives saved, 100 million people could have died. Again, championed by George W. Bush and supported enthusiastically by religious groups through all these years and Republicans, could now be defeated in its reauthorization. Now, a failure to reauthorize, let me just say one thing, so I'm not hyperbolic. I like to keep it clear here with you guys, keep it straight, not bullshit, not do the four-alarm fire for things that are not necessarily a four-alarm fire yet. A failure to reauthorize PEPFAR wouldn't kill it outright unless the House separately refuses to appropriate money for it. So this falls now under the reauthorization of all the monies for the government to keep running. Now, if the House does that, that's a different ballgame. That's much worse than what's at stake here because, it would eliminate some of the rules that ensure the program's funds go to the right places. But a no vote, that's just legislative parliamentary stuff. But a no vote's going to say the rest of the world, they can't rely on us. We have our absolutely heroic, noble, fantastic accomplishment that this country's committed to because George W. Bush made it a priority. We're a leader in global health, but we won't be. Irrepresented PEPFAR does and has and will continue to, God willing, its existence remains the highest ideals of our country. It's why America shouldn't be scorned all over the globe. I always say it's why people on the left, who have nothing to do with this, but when they start to talk about all the horrible things we do, even those that loathe George W. Bush, even maybe not as much as Trump, everybody has basically to admit this has been a transformative and a seminal program in American government. Government saving the government, doing the things it should do, which is doing good by people. It represents American compassion, leadership, expertise, and willingness to put our might behind right. Now it could be a casualty. Woe unto us if it is. Folks, thank you for joining me. As always, hey, I'm doing a lot of TikToking at Dirty Moderate Nation. Don't miss us. And of course, so many exciting things coming up as always. I know I keep teasing you, but they're coming. Trust me, because 2024 is getting close. In the meantime, stay dirty, stay moderate, and stay safe.